All right. Hello. My name is Brandon, and this is my channel all about veganism. For those of you who may have already perused the channel, you may find that I discuss vegan nutrition a little bit. I mostly do vegan street outreach or vegan activism, talking to people on the street, having debates, stuff like that, educating, people on what veganism is. And that is precisely what we're going to discuss today. What is veganism, right? Because there's a lot of vegan activism, a lot of vegan education, but I haven't really seen too many videos or too many people actually going over what veganism is in a very clear and understandable way for those of you who may not be vegan or who may be new to veganism. So that's what this video is. So if you are not vegan yet, or if you're new to veganism, this is the video for you. So let's get started. First, I think it is useful to just look at a very brief, I know we can go, super in depth in the history, but just a very brief look at the history of veganism, how long it's been around roughly, and how it really formed into like an organized philosophy. So I went to the Vegan Society's website to look at the history of veganism. Seemed like a great source. So per their vegan history section, if we look at early vegans, the Vegan Society may have been established nearly 80 years ago, but veganism has been around much longer. Evidence of people choosing to avoid animal products can be traced back over 2,000 years. As early as 500 BCE, Greek philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras, you might recognize the name from the Pythagorean theorem, promoted benevolence among all species and followed what could be described as a vegetarian diet. Around the same time, Siddhartha Gautama, better known as the Buddha, was discussing vegetarian diets with his followers. Fast forward to 1806 CE, and the earliest concepts of veganism are just starting to take shape, with Dr. William Lamb and Percy Bysshe amongst the first Europeans to publicly object to eggs and dairy on ethical grounds. Right, so the earliest kind of rough start of veganism is mostly vegetarianism, avoiding possibly the slaughter of animals or the consumption of like animal flesh, and not so much avoiding dairy and eggs yet, or other animal products. But 1806 CE is where we actually see the rejection of dairy and eggs. So that is interesting. Now, getting into the first modern day vegans, in November 1944, Donald Watson called a meeting with 5 other non-dairy vegetarians, which I guess was the name for a vegan before the term vegan was coined, including Elsie Shrigley, to discuss non-dairy vegetarian diets and lifestyles. Though many held similar views at the time, these 6 pioneers were the first to actively found a new movement, despite opposition. The group felt a new word was required to describe them, something more concise than non-dairy vegetarians. Rejected words included dairy ban, vitan, and benivore. They eventually settled on vegan, a word that Donald Watson later described as containing the first 3 letters and the last 2 letters of vegetarian. In the words of Donald Watson, it marked the beginning and end of vegetarian. Now, reviewing the first official definition of veganism, that points to Leslie J. Cross. So, although the vegan diet was defined early on, it was as late as 1949 before Leslie J. Cross pointed out that the society lacked a definition of veganism, and he suggested the principle of the emancipation of animals from exploitation by man. This is later clarified as to seek an end to the use of animals by man for food, commodities, work, hunting, vivisection, and by all other uses involving exploitation of animal life by man. So that's a brief history, and what's important is the definition, right? So the definition of veganism, that was the original definition by Leslie J. Cross, and the Vegan Society modern day definition of veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of humans, animals, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. So that is the modern day definition by the vegan, listed on the Vegan Society's website. So yeah, that is a brief, very brief history. I have heard of various branches and origins of veganism, whether it's in India, whether it's through different religions or spiritual practices, different philosophers. But the main thing I want to get across is just a brief history, and then that first original definition. Now, before we move on to the next part of the video, I think we should define a few terms which you may hear if you have been looking into veganism, or I would say they are crucial to understand when it comes to understanding veganism. So the first word of importance to define here is sentience. So sentience is the capacity to experience feelings and sensations, to have affective consciousness, subjective states that have a positive or negative valence. The way that I simplify that is essentially there is an individual inside of you, right? Like you have an awareness, and you are conscious of your life, essentially, right? You have preferences, you have values, you have a will to live, things like that. Humans are sentient. Animals are sentient. Almost all animals are sentient. There's actually recently a New York Declaration of Consciousness. It was actually an updated Declaration of Consciousness, which if you want to review, I will link in the description, so you can take a look at that, where they come to a consensus that mammals, birds are almost certainly sentient, and they go through other categories of animals as well. So very interesting. The next term to define is speciesism, right? So speciesism is essentially the practice of treating members of one species as morally more important than members of other species. So that could be valuing dogs more than cows, or valuing humans more than other species of animals. So think racism or discrimination just with species of animals instead of skin color or sex or whatever other kind of discrimination you want to look at. This term is important because while I may, in the next part of the video it may not come up, this is the root of what vegans or veganism hopes to abolish, right? We reject and want to abolish speciesism, right? The idea that humans are more morally valuable or more morally important just because we are of the human species versus a cow, a dog, a rat, etc. And if you are sitting here and wondering, well, aren't humans more important than other species of animals? Or isn't my dog more important than a random cow? Well, again, when we look to the first term, sentience, in all of the categories that matter morally, the ability to feel pain, the ability to have a subjective experience, the will to live, all animals want to live, right? They want to be free, they want to live, they don't want to have their lives taken away from them. So while you may have a stronger connection with certain animals, or you may be able to empathize better with certain animals, when it comes to valuing certain species or all species of animals morally, they're all equal in the categories that count, which is sentience. The last term to define is exploitation, and exploitation is defined as the action or act of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. That's like a big understatement with what happens to non-human animals, but when we are talking about exploitation, think slavery, right? Think like a total domination of a group of individuals that we use entirely for our benefit. Now, as we discussed when we reviewed the definition of veganism, veganism is a philosophy. So it's a philosophy that rejects the exploitation of animals. That means we don't want to use them, abuse them, or kill them for food, clothing, entertainment, or anything else. They are not products. They are not commodities. They are sentient individuals. Veganism is a moral philosophy. It has nothing to do with how or what you eat. It has nothing to do with the environment. It has nothing to do with human impact on the planet, none of that. It is a moral philosophy that rejects the exploitation of animals. If it's not related to rejecting the mindset that animals are objects / slaves for humans to use for our benefit, that is not veganism. Now, there are aspects of veganism, maybe practical implications, right? Whether it's plant-based dieting or different actions you can take that do have environmental benefits or environmental impacts, stuff like that. But that's not what veganism is, right? Veganism is rejecting the exploitation of animals, is viewing animals as sentient individuals who deserve rights. You cannot be vegan for your health or for the environment. Now, there are many people who may choose to eat a plant-based diet for health reasons or for environmental reasons. Those individuals are not vegans, right? They may eat a diet that's compatible with the vegan philosophy, but that's only their diet. But for the most part, they're just following a plant-based diet. To use another social justice movement as an example, we can look at feminism. So let's say that by giving women equal rights, it was better for your health and for the environment. Now, somebody may choose to grant women equal rights because of those reasons, right? Because of those benefits, but still believe women are not equal and do not actually deserve equal rights. From a practical perspective, right, their actions would be compatible with those of a feminist. But from a philosophical perspective, they would not be a feminist at all, right? They don't actually believe that women deserve equal rights. Shifting the mindset of oppressors and adopting the philosophy of equality is crucial in sustaining long-term change and seeing a world where animals are protected from oppression. So while diets and actions compatible with veganism often have various health benefits or environmental benefits, those are, for lack of a better term, I would say those are byproducts of shifting your mindset to that of a vegan one. Again, it comes down to rejecting the exploitation of animals, rejecting the mindset or shifting the mindset that animals are essentially our slaves for us to treat however we deem fit. So now that we are on the same page when it comes to the philosophy of veganism, or what veganism actually is, what would a vegan world entail? How do we take the philosophy and actually put it into practice in the real world? First, I would like to explain what your actions would or should look like if you align with the vegan philosophy. As vegans, we want to be avoiding and directly oppose industries or activities that exploit animals. Because if veganism is rejecting the exploitation of animals, that is a value that we hold as vegans, right? We reject the exploitation of animals. We think it is wrong that we treat animals as slaves. So our actions should align with that value. So that means not buying animal flesh, not buying animal secretions, that would be dairy and eggs, fur, leather, wool, or anything else involving the exploitation of animals. It doesn't matter how nicely or how well, quote unquote, an animal or group of animals are treated before being exploited or while they're being exploited. Similar to how we don't accept that treatment with humans, right? We go back to that term speciesism. Even if humans or a group of humans were treated as nicely as possible, we would not accept the exploitation, the abuse, the murder of humans, even if they were given the best 10 years of their life before doing so. To avoid being a speciesist, we also do not accept that for animals. You'll hear a lot of welfare arguments. Arguments like, we gave the animals a great life before slitting their throat and chopping them up into pieces. The dairy cows we look after are given a great life while they're being forcibly impregnated and having their babies taken away. So you'll hear a lot of welfare arguments but all of it is a lie, right? All of it's a lie. It's essentially a trick to get you to think that there are actually ways to exploit animals and it'd be morally right. We also avoid products tested on animals and industries that profit from using them for entertainment. By us not contributing to those industries and avoiding actions that contribute to the exploitation of animals, we are stating, right, as a collective or as individuals, that we directly oppose and are against the exploitation of animals. It's similar to how, like, a feminist would avoid industries or actions that oppress women. Now, getting back to the vegan world, right? Because as vegans, right, of course, on an individual level, I don't care if the world's never going to be fully vegan. I'm always going to align my actions with my values. I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I am going to do what I think is right, regardless of how many people are doing it. But the ultimate goal, what I would like to see as a vegan, is a vegan world. A world where animals are no longer exploited or have protections from being exploited. So how do we get to a vegan world, and what does a vegan world actually mean, or what does it look like? This is where you may see a broad range of ideas and legislation, like proposals from vegans who may not always agree with one another. So when we're discussing what the best way to go about it is, what it would look like, the goal is always a world where we abolish the exploitation of animals. But this, of course, can be done in a variety of ways, can be legislated differently if we're talking about legal action. So to keep it simple, I'm just going to share what makes the most sense to me. And please comment below what you would change, what you agree with, if you have any questions about anything we discussed. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. To me, a vegan world would entail legal protections for animals to prevent their exploitation. Essentially, I view animal rights as a logical extension of human rights, which we already grant and are constantly expanding, due to the shared characteristic of sentience. I want to see animals be given rights and constantly expand those rights, just like we do with humans. See, nobody is born with rights. Rights are granted by individuals living in a society or a community to protect innocent or vulnerable populations from harm, abuse, and exploitation. And by granting rights, we are ensuring the highest degree of protection from these actions or from exploitation, because we are creating laws that lead to consequences if broken. Just like how slavery is illegal, it is against the law to enslave another individual, because we recognize that humans have the right to be protected from slavery, have the right to not be enslaved. And if you try to enslave somebody, you would be breaking the law and would have consequences. We may never actually be able to rid the world of racism or racists, right? There may always be racist ideologies, racist thinking, racist ideas spread, even though the goal, right, our ultimate goal is to always change the mindset and rid the world of these harmful and wrong ideas. But by giving people of color or people in those vulnerable populations rights, that ensures a high degree of protection for those individuals from being exploited or harmed due to racism. Likewise, if we were to grant animals rights, even if 100% of the world may never be vegan, right, in terms of philosophically, right, in terms of the vegan definition of rejecting the exploitation of animals. So, because realistically, just like with racism, sexism, homophobia, we're never going to get everybody on the same page, right? There still may be people who can't recognize or refuse to recognize the rights of those individuals. When we grant rights, we can ensure a high degree of protection from animals being exploited. I think there is this idea that vegans, through vegan outreach, through YouTube videos, through campaigns, through a variety of ways, can change everyone's mind, and legal protection for animals will not be necessary because the mindset will have shifted. Now, this is the hope, right? I would hope to see this one day, but realistically, the best outcome, or I would say the win for veganism, for a vegan world, would be actually, extending rights to animals just like we have with humans. Because in the past, right, we didn't just trust people to not be racist or sexist anymore. It was and is crucial that those vulnerable populations are given legal protections from people who still may have racist, sexist, speciesist views, to prevent those individuals from carrying out harm against, the vulnerable populations. You may hear the term rights violation used quite a bit in vegan spaces or vegan arguments. Now, a rights violation, used in the context of talking about a harmful action towards a non-human animal, is implying that the protection from said action would be the legal right granted to animals in a vegan world. Similarly with humans, if a human were to be killed by another human, that would be a violation of the human's rights, right? The human that was killed. I think we will get to a vegan world by putting laws in place that provide and protect the most amount of rights possible to animals, which will ultimately reduce or eliminate the violation of their now granted rights. That's how I view kind of the practical implications, or what a vegan world would actually look like. So that's it. I mean, that is, I would say, as clear as I can explain what veganism is, besides going into different nuances, different arguments, really dissecting everything. If you have any questions, if you're not sure about something, please comment below, ask your questions, share your thoughts. I'm going to be doing more concept-based videos like this. So in the next video, I will be reviewing why it is important to be logically consistent. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.